Land of the Rising Sun, Prehistoric Japan and the Birth of Mythology. Darkness blankets the archipelago, islands still forming in volcanic fury, waiting for their story to begin. 20,000 years ago, land bridges connect what will become Japan to mainland Asia. Stone tools scatter beaches, left by wandering hunters following megafauna across frozen passages. This is the dawn before dawn, where Japan's epic begins not with samurai or emperors, but with ice and stone and desperate survival. These first inhabitants, the Jomon people, leave behind pottery spiraled like rope, the oldest ceramics on Earth, 13,000 years old, whispering secrets of a people we've nearly forgotten. The Jomon hunt and gather beneath ancient forests, building pit houses clustered near rich fishing grounds. They carve mysterious figurines, dogu, with alien eyes and swollen bellies, perhaps fertility charms or representations of ancestors watching from beyond. For 10,000 years, longer than any other civilization on Earth, they remain remarkably stable, neither advancing nor retreating, living in harmony with islands that give enough but never too much. Their religion forms around nature spirits, kami, dwelling in mountains, trees, rivers, the earliest whispers of Shinto, a faith without founders or prophets, born from awe of nature's power. Around 300 BCE, everything changes. From Korean shores come newcomers, the Yayoi, bringing rice cultivation, metalworking, mirrors and bells cast in bronze. Their arrival marks Japan's first great transformation, agriculture replacing hunting, settled villages replacing seasonal camps. The islands shift beneath this revolution, spreading northeast from Kyushu. Population booms, social hierarchy emerges, wealth accumulates. War follows progress. Skeletons from this era show the first evidence of systematic violence, arrowheads embedded in bone, defensive moats surrounding settlements. Power concentrates in the hands of local chieftains controlling the best paddies, presaging the feudal system to come. While farmers reshape valleys, myths crystallize to explain existence. Izanagi and Izanami, male and female principles, stir the primordial ocean with a jeweled spear, letting drops fall to form the islands of Japan. They birth gods of storms, mountains, fire. Izanami dies giving birth to flames, while grieving Izanagi journeys to the underworld seeking her, only to flee in horror at her rotting corpse. Washing himself clean, he creates 3 noble children: Amaterasu from his left eye, goddess of the sun; Tsukuyomi from his right, god of the moon; and Susanoo from his nose, god of storms and seas, forever troubling his siblings. Amaterasu, insulted by wild Susanoo's behavior, hides in a cave, plunging the world into darkness. The other 8 million gods, a poetic number meaning uncountable, gather outside, hanging jewels and mirrors from trees. The goddess Ame no Uzume performs a ribald dance, generating such laughter that curious Amaterasu peeks out, catching her reflection in the mirror. Light returns to creation, and the gods banish Susanoo to earth, where his descendants will find the first sacred sword. This cosmic drama establishes the Imperial line. Japan's emperors claim direct descent from Amaterasu through her grandson Ninigi, sent to rule the islands with 3 sacred treasures: mirror, sword, and jewel. Imperial regalia still symbolizing Japanese sovereignty today. By the 3rd century CE, hundreds of small kingdoms dot the islands, fighting for supremacy. Chinese chronicles mention a land called Wa, ruled by a shamaness queen named Himiko, who sends envoys to China's Wei dynasty in 238 CE. Japan's first documented contact with mainland powers. Archaeological evidence reveals growing social stratification. Massive burial mounds, kofun, house chieftains with gold-decorated swords, horse trappings, mirrors from China, protective Haniwa clay figures standing eternal guard. The Yamato clan gradually establishes dominance in central Honshu, their leader claiming divine ancestry through Amaterasu, laying foundations for what will become the world's oldest continuous monarchy. As the 5th century dawns, Japan emerges from prehistory into its classical age. Writing arrives from China through Korea. Complex characters initially mastered only by court scholars and Buddhist monks. Chronicles will later record these formative centuries. The Kojiki and Nihon Shoki, blending myth and history, divine origins with earthly politics. The stage is set for an extraordinary story. An island nation that will repeatedly open to outside influence, then close to digest it, creating something uniquely, unmistakably Japanese. From volcanic birth to divine emperors, Japan's foundation myths explain not just creation, but national character, resourceful, resilient, reverential toward nature's power. The sun goddess still watches over her sacred landscape, where past never fully surrenders to present, where ancient and modern dance in perpetual, graceful tension. Imperial bloodlines, the age of gods, and the first emperors. Morning light breaks across Mount Miwa, sacred peak where imperial messengers climb to commune with heavenly spirits. It's the 6th century, and the Yamato clan tightens its grip over central Japan, its leaders no longer mere chieftains, but emperors claiming divine mandate. Emperor Kime, 29th in a line reaching back to mythical Jimmu, faces a world transforming around him. Chinese learning, Korean crafts, and most significantly, Buddhist sutras arriving in 552 CE, challenging native kami worship with sophisticated philosophy from distant India. Court factions battle over this foreign faith. The powerful Soga clan embraces Buddhism, while traditionalists resist. When epidemic strikes, opponents claim angry native gods punish Japan for alien devotions. They seize Buddha statues, casting them into canals, burning temples, yet Buddhism endures, protected by Empress Suiko and her regent Prince Shotoku. This remarkable prince drafts Japan's first constitution in 604 CE, 17 articles emphasizing harmony, proper conduct, and centralized authority under the emperor. He builds magnificent Horyuji Temple, oldest wooden structure on Earth still standing today, and dispatches Japan's first official embassy to Tang Dynasty China in 607 CE, beginning centuries of cultural borrowing that will transform the islands. Emperor Tenji and his successor Tenmu reshape governance with the Taika reforms and Taiho Code, centralizing power, establishing provinces governed by appointed officials rather than hereditary chiefs, creating tax systems based on land surveys, and instituting civil service examinations modeled on Chinese practice. Japan's first permanent capital rises at Nara in 710 CE. Grid-patterned streets, radiating from palaces and temples, including massive Todaiji, housing a 53-foot bronze Buddha. Court life grows sophisticated. Aristocrats in lacquered silks compose poetry, practice calligraphy, debate Buddhist doctrines, while commoners labor in rice fields, paying taxes in grain, cloth, and labor. Buddhism flourishes, splintering into competing sects. Tendai and Shingon establishing mountaintop monasteries, while Pure Land Buddhism spreads among common people seeking salvation through faith alone. Shinto persists alongside, gradually blending with Buddhist practice, native kami reinterpreted as manifestations of Buddhist deities, creating unique syncretism where temples and shrines often share grounds. Emperor Kammu moves the capital to Heian-kyo, modern Kyoto, in 794 CE, beginning Japan's classical golden age lasting 4 centuries, a time of refined aesthetics, aristocratic dominance, and female literary brilliance, producing Lady Murasaki's Tale of Genji, world's first novel. Imperial power reaches its zenith, then gradually declines as aristocratic families, particularly the Fujiwara clan, control the throne through strategic marriages, placing their daughters as imperial consorts and ruling as regents for young emperors. Court nobles grow increasingly removed from provincial realities, absorbed in elaborate ceremonies and romantic intrigues, while tax revenues shrink and private estates proliferate beyond central control. On rural frontiers, provincial governors and local strongmen develop private armies of mounted warriors, samurai, initially serving as imperial police and tax collectors, but gradually forming an independent power base that will eventually overshadow the throne itself. By the 12th century, imperial succession disputes trigger civil war between rival noble houses, the Taira and Minamoto clans, both claiming to fight for imperial legitimacy while pursuing their own ambitions. The emperor remains divine in theory, but increasingly powerless in practice, a pattern that will persist through much of Japanese history, where real authority often rests with military leaders governing in the emperor's name. The imperial line continues unbroken, a symbol of cultural continuity and national identity transcending political turbulence. But samurai swords now determine Japan's fate as aristocrats' fine calligraphy brushes lose their power to shape destinies. Samurai Dawn. The rise of warrior culture and feudal Japan. Autumn leaves scatter across Kamakura's hills as a new era dawns. The year is 1185, and Minamoto no Yoritomo, battle-hardened, ambitious, kneels before the emperor, receiving the title of Shogun. The sword has triumphed over the scepter. Warriors now rule Japan. After devastating the rival Taira clan in naval battles that turn the inland sea crimson, Yoritomo establishes Japan's first military government, the Kamakura Bakufu, parallel to the imperial court, but wielding true power. A dual political structure emerges. Emperors reign in ceremonial splendor from Kyoto, while shoguns rule from Kamakura, forging alliances with provincial warrior lords through oaths of loyalty rather than bureaucratic appointments. Behind Yoritomo stands his wife, Hojo Masako, the Nun shogun, whose family will control the Bakufu after her husband's death, exposing the fragility of this new order. When Emperor Go-Daigo attempts to restore imperial power in the 1430s, a brief civil war ensues. Ashikaga Takauji, initially the emperor's champion, turns against his sovereign, establishing the Ashikaga shogunate and moving the military capital to Kyoto itself, the shogun's palace, built in the same city as the imperial court, but wielding the actual authority. This begins a bitter imperial schism, the northern and southern courts, rival emperors claiming legitimacy until reunification in 1392 under the Ashikaga's preferred line. Beneath these power struggles, a warrior code crystallizes, Bushido, the way of the warrior, emphasizing loyalty, honor, courage, and stoicism in the face of death. Samurai train from childhood in martial arts, developing fighting techniques with sword, bow, spear, and horse. Their iconic katana swords, crafted by hereditary swordsmiths, folding steel thousands of times to create perfect balance of flexibility and hardness, become objects of spiritual significance, believed to contain their wielder's soul. Ritual suicide, seppuku, emerges as the honorable death for disgraced warriors, a final demonstration of courage and control, often performed with elaborate ceremony. The 1400s bring cultural flowering but political deterioration. Ashikaga Yoshimitsu patronizes Zen-influenced arts, the tea ceremony, ink painting, rakumkum. Rock gardens and no drama evolve under shogunal sponsorship. Golden Pavilion gleams above Kyoto's Mirror Lake, embodying aesthetic refinement even as provincial warlords, daimyo, grow increasingly independent. By the mid-15th century, central authority collapses entirely when the Onin War erupts over shogunal succession, devastating Kyoto and unleashing a century of civil conflict. The Sengoku period, or Age of Warring States. Castles rise on strategic heights, surrounded by moats and multiple baileys, where daimyo command armies of mounted samurai and ashigaru foot soldiers wielding matchlock guns, after Portuguese traders introduce firearms in 1543. Buddhist monasteries become military powers too, fortified temple complexes housing warrior monks who fight for sectarian interests. Common farmers suffer as armies trample fields, burn villages, and conscript peasants. Constant warfare reshapes social structure. Merit increasingly trumps birth, as capable warriors rise from obscurity to power through battlefield prowess, while ancient noble families fade into irrelevance without martial skills. Three remarkable men emerge from this chaos to reunify Japan. First comes Oda Nobunaga, brilliant, ruthless tactician crushing opponents with innovative firearms tactics at Battle of Nagashino in 1575, massacring warrior monks who oppose him, and beginning unification before his assassination in 1582. His general Toyotomi Hideyoshi, born a peasant but rising to become Japan's supreme warlord, continues the work, completing domestic unification through military campaigns and political marriages. Hideyoshi launches social reforms separating warriors from farmers through sword hunts, confiscating weapons from non-samurai, freezing class distinctions that will characterize Japanese society for centuries. Hideyoshi's ambitions extend beyond Japan's shores. He launches massive invasions of Korea in 1592 and 1597, seeking to conquer China itself. These campaigns ultimately fail, draining Japan's resources and destabilizing Hideyoshi's regime. Upon his death in 1598, power struggles erupt between supporters of his infant son and rival daimyo. From this final conflict emerges Tokugawa Ieyasu, patient, calculating survivor of decades of warfare, who triumphs at the Battle of Sekigahara in 1600, then systematically eliminates remaining opposition, including Hideyoshi's heir. By 1615, the Tokugawa shogunate stands supreme, ending a century of bloodshed and establishing peace that will last 250 years, transforming Japan from battleground to ordered society where the samurai must find purpose beyond warfare. Sword and Shadow. The Warring States period and unification. Flames dance across Kyoto's ancient temples, palaces reduced to ash as rival warlords battle through sacred streets. The 16th century unfolds in blood and fire. Japan's Sengoku period reaches its chaotic peak. More than 200 daimyo carve the nation into warring domains. Alliances form and shatter with the seasons, and betrayal becomes common currency in power struggles where yesterday's master becomes today's enemy. Villages empty as farmers flee marching armies. Famine stalks provinces where rice fields lie untended, and Buddhist sects transform sacred mountains into fortresses, monks trading sutras for spears. Amid this turbulence, European missionaries and merchants arrive, Portuguese vessels making landfall at Tanegashima in 1543, their matchlock guns immediately copied by Japanese smiths and deployed on battlefields. Francis Xavier brings Christianity in 1549, finding fertile ground among war-weary peasants and some curious daimyo. The new faith spreads rapidly across Kyushu and western Japan. By 1580, over 100,000 converts pray to a foreign god, building churches where Buddhist temples once dominated. Foreign traders establish outposts in Nagasaki, creating a window to distant worlds and technologies that transform warfare and culture alike. From provincial obscurity rises Oda Nobunaga, brilliant tactician with cold ambition that recognizes neither tradition nor mercy. Beginning with just one province, Owari, he exploits arquebus firearms to devastating effect, his disciplined musketeers cutting down charging samurai at Nagashino in 1575. Nobunaga shows no reverence for ancient institutions. He burns Mount Hiei to eliminate troublesome warrior monks, 20,000 dying in the inferno. Aristocrats and imperial courtiers feel his heavy hand as he rips down estate boundaries, builds roads through noble lands, and standardizes weights, measures, and currency to facilitate commerce. Market towns flourish under his protection as he eliminates highway tolls and guild monopolies. Nobunaga meets his end through betrayal, forced to commit seppuku during an audience with the emperor, when his general Akechi Mitsuhide surrounds the temple with troops in 1582. The rebellion collapses quickly as Toyotomi Hideyoshi, Nobunaga's most brilliant commander, avenges his lord, defeating Mitsuhide within 2 weeks before claiming succession. Hideyoshi's rise embodies the social mobility of this chaotic era. Born a peasant farmer, he rises through intelligence and courage to become Japan's supreme ruler, taking the title of Kampaku, Imperial Regent, since his common birth prevents him becoming shogun. Hideyoshi proves himself Nobunaga's worthy successor, completing unification through strategic marriages, hostage exchanges, and campaigns of overwhelming force. His sword hunt edicts confiscate weapons from farmers, solidifying class boundaries with legal prohibitions against changing social status. Farmers must remain on the land, merchants in towns, samurai in castle towns serving their lords. His cadastral surveys map every field and village, establishing tax records that will endure for centuries. Yet peace brings unexpected consequences. Tens of thousands of masterless samurai pose potential threats to stability with their warrior skills and limited economic prospects. The solution appears in Hideyoshi's grandest, most disastrous vision: the conquest of Korea and China. In 1592, over 150,000 Japanese troops cross the sea, initially sweeping through Korean peninsula before facing staunch resistance from Korean Admiral Yi Sun-sin's innovative turtle ships and fierce defensive campaigns. Ming China sends massive reinforcements, turning the tide and forcing Japanese withdrawal in 1593. Undeterred, Hideyoshi launches a second invasion in 1597, Equally unsuccessful and draining Japan's treasury and manpower before his death in 1598 leaves the campaign unresolved and his 5-year-old son vulnerable. Into this uncertain moment steps Tokugawa Ieyasu, patient schemer who survived decades of shifting alliances. Initially pledging to protect young Hideyori, Ieyasu gradually consolidates power before openly challenging Hideyoshi's loyalists. The decisive moment comes at Sekigahara in 1600. The realm divided into east and west, as Ieyasu's 80,000 troops face a coalition of western daimyo. Fog shrouds the valley as armies clash in Japan's most consequential battle. Betrayal tips the scales when key commanders switch sides during combat, delivering victory to the Tokugawa forces. The Battle of Sekigahara reshapes Japan's political landscape. Victorious daimyo receive expanded territories while defeated clans lose lands or face extinction. Ieyasu methodically eliminates remaining threats, culminating in the siege of Osaka Castle in 1614 through 1615, where Hideyoshi's son and last supporters perish in flames. With this final victory, Japan's unification stands complete. Ieyasu establishes the Tokugawa shogunate in Edo, modern Tokyo, creating governmental structures that will survive until 1868. A century of warfare ends, giving birth to a new Japan. Rigidly stratified, increasingly isolated, but enjoying unprecedented peace that will transform culture and society in ways the battle-hardened unifiers could scarcely imagine. The Shogun's peace, Tokugawa isolation, and cultural flowering. Cherry blossoms drift through still air above Edo Castle, massive stone walls encircling Japan's new power center, a city that will one day become Tokyo. It's 1615, and Tokugawa Ieyasu, now retired as shogun but still pulling political strings, designs a system to prevent any return of chaos. His solution is simple, yet profound. Control movement, control information, control ambition. The alternate attendance system, Sankin Kotai, requires daimyo to maintain expensive residences in Edo and leave family members as hostages while alternating between their domains and the shogun's capital. Provincial lords spend fortunes traveling with large retinues along prescribed routes, depleting resources that might otherwise fund rebellions. Tokugawa Ieyamitsu, third shogun, perceives growing threat from European influences, particularly Christianity, which claims loyalty transcending earthly authority. His solution: Sakoku, closing Japan to nearly all foreign contact in 1639. Spanish and Portuguese traders face expulsion. Japanese citizens cannot leave on pain of death. Shipwrecked sailors returning from abroad face execution. Only tiny Dutch and Chinese trading posts remain on artificial Dejima Island in Nagasaki Harbor, closely monitored windows to the outside world. Brutal persecution eliminates visible Christianity. Suspected converts must publicly trample religious images, fumie, or face torture and death. Some believers go underground, kakure kirishitan, preserving faith in remote villages for centuries despite persecution. Behind barriers of ocean and policy, a uniquely Japanese culture flourishes. Peace brings prosperity. Population doubles to 30 million by 1720. Cities grow, and merchant wealth increases despite official social hierarchy placing commerce below agriculture. Osaka becomes the nation's kitchen, financial center where rice futures trade, national market integrates through standardized currency, and specialized production regions emerge. Castle towns grow into administrative centers where samurai serve as bureaucrats rather than warriors, gradually transforming from battlefield commanders to desk-bound officials managing tax records and legal disputes. Swords remain symbols of status, but grow increasingly ceremonial as generations pass without war. Edo becomes the world's largest city, over 1 million inhabitants by 1800s, a vibrant urban landscape where merchant culture flourishes despite official ideology valuing samurai austerity over commercial indulgence. Ukiyo, the floating world of entertainment districts, offers escape from rigid social conventions through kabuki theaters, sumo tournaments, geisha entertainments, and vibrant woodblock prints capturing urban fashion and famous actors. Literacy spreads beyond elite circles as commercial publishing flourishes. Novels, travel guides, encyclopedias, and poetry collections reach mass audiences hungry for knowledge and entertainment. Neo-Confucian philosophy provides ideological foundation for the regime, emphasizing loyalty, filial piety, proper social relations, and detailed regulations governing everything from clothing to architecture based on social rank. Yet beneath official orthodoxy, intellectual currents evolve. Kokugaku, native studies, scholars like Motoori Norinaga rediscover ancient Japanese classics, seeking authentic national identity separate from Chinese influence. Dutch learning, Rangaku, allows selective Western knowledge to filter through Dejima's restrictions, bringing astronomy, medicine, botany, and engineering concepts to curious Japanese scholars despite isolation policies. By early 19th century, cracks appear in the shogunate's carefully constructed order. Agricultural productivity stagnates while population grows. Samurai stipends remain fixed while inflation erodes purchasing power. Merchant families accumulate wealth, rivaling daimyo fortunes despite their theoretically lower status. Peasant uprisings increase, over 700 recorded between 1600 and 1868, while urban riots protest rice shortages. The system designed by Ieyasu shows strain, unable to adapt to changing economic realities or address growing disparities between official ideology and actual social conditions. External pressure mounts as Western nations industrialize and expand commercial empires. Russia probes northern borders. British ships appear off coasts. American whalers seek ports. Knowledge of Western technological advancement filters through despite restrictions. Then arrives 1853. Commander Matthew Perry's black ships steam into Edo Bay, cannon aimed at the shogun's capital, demanding Japan open to trade with unambiguous threat of force behind diplomatic language. The isolation policy, 2 centuries old, crumbles before superior firepower, leaving shogunate leaders facing impossible choices between resistance they cannot sustain and concessions that undermine their authority. Japan's self-contained world stands at its end, peaceful isolation giving way to turbulent engagement with global powers that will transform the nation more rapidly and radically than any period since First Imperial centralization 12 centuries earlier. Black ships and broken barriers, Meiji restoration and modernization. Cannon smoke drifts across Edo Bay as Commodore Perry's steam-powered warships depart in 1854, leaving behind a nation in crisis. The shogunate's leaders sign unequal treaties opening ports to Western trade, granting extraterritorial rights to foreigners, and surrendering tariff autonomy. Concessions similar to those forcing China into semi-colonial status. Japan's 2-century isolation shatters irreparably, exposing fundamental weakness before Western industrial might. Political turmoil erupts. Activists rally behind ancient slogans, "Revere the Emperor," "Expel the barbarians," while pragmatists recognize resistance guarantees destruction under Western guns. The shogun walks tightropes between traditionalists demanding expulsion and realists seeking accommodation, pleasing neither and weakening central authority. Crisis accelerates as internal tensions merge with foreign pressure. Radical samurai assassinate Westerners and Japanese officials deemed too accommodating. Foreign powers respond with punitive bombardments of coastal domains like Satsuma and Choshu. Ironically, these confrontations transform Japan's future. Humiliation convinces powerful domains of urgent modernization needs. Their leaders secretly send students abroad, despite travel bans, purchase weapons and ships, reform military training, and build proto-industrial facilities. Emperor Komei dies in 1867 as tensions peak, leaving the throne to 15-year-old son Mutsuhito, future Emperor Meiji, whose reign will witness Japan's most dramatic transformation. The decisive moment arrives in January 1868. Satsuma and Choshu forces seize Imperial Palace in Kyoto, issue declaration restoring direct imperial rule, and launch military campaign against shogunal forces. The Boshin War proves surprisingly brief. The last shogun, Tokugawa Yoshinobu, surrenders without significant resistance, though loyalist forces continue fighting until May 1869, when final holdouts at Hakodate surrender. This Meiji restoration fundamentally reconfigures Japanese governance, ending 7 centuries of military government and theoretically returning power to an emperor whose ancestors had been ceremonial figures for a millennium. Reality proves more complex. Provincial samurai who engineered the restoration control policy through the young emperor, implementing radical reforms at breathtaking pace. The capital moves from Kyoto to Edo, renamed Tokyo, eastern capital. Feudal domains dissolve into prefectures under central control. Ancient class system officially ends with 4 equal classes: former nobles, samurai, farmers, and townspeople. Universal male conscription replaces hereditary warrior class. Uniform national currency replaces domain currencies. And land tax reform establishes private ownership with direct tax payment to central government rather than feudal dues to local lords. The slogan, "Rich Country, Strong Army," drives national policy as Japan races to catch Western powers. The Iwakura Mission, 1871 through 1873, sends senior officials touring America and Europe, studying everything from postal systems to parliament structures, universities to factories. Returning leaders implement comprehensive modernization programs, building telegraph networks, railroads, modern banking systems, and industrial infrastructure. Education becomes compulsory, with nationwide system emphasizing practical knowledge alongside intense nationalism. Western experts receive lavish contracts to teach everything from engineering to law, while thousands of Japanese students study abroad, returning with technical skills and institutional knowledge. Not all welcome these dizzying changes. The samurai class, stripped of privileges, stipends, and even right to wear swords, rises in repeated rebellions, most significantly the Satsuma Rebellion, led by Saigo Takamori in 1877. Government forces crush these uprisings with modern weapons, demonstrating new military effectiveness, but creating martyrs whose memory will fuel nostalgic nationalism. Commoners, too, resist unwelcome changes, particularly land tax reforms benefiting wealthy landlords while burdening small farmers, and conscription removing young men from agricultural labor. Yet modernization continues relentlessly, prioritizing national strength over individual interests. Political evolution follows economic and military reforms. After experimenting with various models, oligarchs draft constitution in 1889, granting limited democracy through elected lower house while preserving oligarchic control through appointed upper house and cabinet responsible to emperor, not parliament. The document carefully balances democratic forms with authoritarian substance, creating framework for constitutional monarchy while enshrining emperor as sacred and inviolable descendant of sun goddess. Political parties gradually develop despite government resistance, pushing for broader representation but accepting fundamental premise of imperial sovereignty above democratic process. By 1890, Japan achieves basic modernization, functioning industries, national infrastructure, modern military, and constitutional government. Success emboldens leaders to pursue equal standing with Western powers by revising unequal treaties and demonstrating national strength through military action. The Sino-Japanese War of 1894 through 1895 produces stunning victory over China, gaining Taiwan as colony and forcing recognition of Korea's independence from Chinese influence. The Russo-Japanese War, 1904 through 1905, shocks world observers as Asian power defeats European empire, securing position in Korea and southern Manchuria, while inspiring colonized peoples across Asia, who see first successful resistance against Western imperialism. Within 50 years of Perry's arrival, Japan transforms from isolated feudal society to industrial power with global ambitions, completing journey from isolation to empire with unprecedented speed that will shape both national identity and regional relations for centuries to come. Empire of the Sun, colonial ambitions, and military rise. Factory whistles pierce Tokyo's dawn as smokestacks belch across industrial districts. Japan's transformation accelerates into the 20th century. Victory over Russia in 1905 marks watershed moment. First modern Asian power defeating European empire shocks international observers and galvanizes Japanese confidence. The Anglo-Japanese alliance of 1902 places Japan among great powers. The Portsmouth Treaty secures strategic interests in Korea and southern Manchuria, and unequal treaties gradually give way to full sovereignty. A nation that feared colonization just 50 years earlier now joins colonizers' ranks, annexing Korea fully in 1910 after years as protectorate, turning peninsula into extraction economy, serving Japanese interests while suppressing Korean language, culture, and independence movements. Behind triumphant headlines, internal contradictions sharpen. Economic growth enriches zaibatsu conglomerates, Mitsui, Mitsubishi, Sumitomo, Yasuda, whose interlocking financial, industrial, and commercial interests dominate economy while enjoying close government connections. Workers face harsh conditions, 16-hour days, child labor, dangerous factories, spurring labor movements brutally suppressed as subversive. Rural tenancy increases as small farmers lose independence. Youth migrate to crowded urban slums seeking factory work, and wealth concentrates despite nationalist rhetoric of national unity. Political system evolves toward party government through 1910s and 1920s. Universal male suffrage arrives in 1925, but democracy remains constrained by oligarchic power centers, particularly military leadership, claiming direct access to emperor outside civilian control. World War I brings unexpected opportunity. Japan declares war on Germany as British ally, quickly seizing German concessions in China and Pacific Islands, while expanding industrial production to meet Allied demand for munitions and goods. The Paris Peace Conference recognizes Japan's Pacific gains as mandated territories, but rejects racial equality clause in League of Nations covenant, reinforcing Japanese perception of Western hypocrisy regarding imperialism. The Washington Naval Treaty of 1922 establishes inferior 5-5-3 ratio compared to American and British fleets, fueling military resentment of civilian politicians accepting limitation. The 1920s see continued industrialization, steel production, shipbuilding, textiles, chemicals, alongside growing cultural cosmopolitanism in cities and expansion of mass media, department stores, and consumer culture. Economic crisis strikes with Great Depression, devastating Japanese exports and exposing structural weaknesses. Dependence on imported raw materials agricultural suffering, and social inequality. Military officers and ultra-nationalists gain influence advocating expansion as solution to domestic problems. The Manchurian Incident of 1931. Army officers' stage bombing of Japanese-owned railway near Mukden as pretext for occupation establishes puppet state of Manchukuo under nominal rule of last Qing emperor. Civilian government loses control of continental policy as military acts independently, creating situation where assassination becomes political tool and moderates face physical threat. International condemnation leads Japan to withdraw from League of Nations in 1933 rather than abandon conquests, accelerating isolation from international community. The Marco Polo Bridge. Incident of July 1937 escalates limited clashes into full-scale war with China. Japanese forces quickly capture coastal cities, including Shanghai, Nanjing, and Canton, but fail to achieve decisive victory against nationalist forces retreating inland. Atrocities mark the campaign, most infamously the Rape of Nanking, where soldiers massacre thousands of civilians and commit systematic rape during 6-week occupation. War drags on without resolution. Japanese control major cities and railways, but cannot pacify countryside where guerrilla resistance continues. Economic sanctions by Western powers, particularly American oil embargo of 1941, create strategic dilemma: withdraw from China or secure alternative resource base through southern expansion toward resource-rich European colonies. Militarists prevail in internal debates. Alliance with Nazi Germany and Fascist Italy through tripartite pact positions Japan within Axis camp against democratic powers. Military planners develop southern operation targeting British and Dutch colonies while neutralizing American Pacific Fleet through surprise attack. December 7, 1941. Japanese aircraft shatter Sunday morning peace at Pearl Harbor, destroying battleships but missing crucial aircraft carriers. Simultaneous operations launch against Philippines, Malaya, Singapore, and Dutch East Indies in lightning campaign, demonstrating tactical brilliance and operational coordination. Initial victories stun Western powers. Singapore falls February 1942, Philippines in May, while Japanese forces reach Papua New Guinea's doorstep to Australia and Burma's border with India. The empire reaches maximum extent by mid-1942, stretching from Manchuria to Solomon Islands, Burma to Wake Island. But strategic overextension becomes apparent as American industrial might mobilizes. The Battle of Midway in June 1942 marks turning point. 4 Japanese aircraft carriers sink in devastating reversal, shifting initiative permanently toward Allied forces. Guadalcanal fighting. August 1942 through February 1943 begins island-hopping campaign. Allied submarines strangle maritime supply lines, and bombing campaigns against home islands intensify as defensive perimeter contracts. Military leaders continue promising victory despite deteriorating situation. Civilian suffering increases under rationing, bombing, and propaganda demanding sacrifice. Critical resources vanish from factories and fighting units alike. By 1945, defeat looms inevitable. Cities burn under incendiary raids, destroying over 60% of urban areas. Okinawa falls after bitter resistance. Soviet Union prepares to enter Pacific War, and atomic bombs drop on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, August 6th and 9th. Emperor Hirohito breaks precedent, personally intervening to accept Allied surrender terms despite military hardliners' resistance. August 15th broadcast announces surrender to stunned population. Divine Emperor speaks directly to subjects for first time, acknowledging situation not necessarily advantageous in masterpiece of understatement. 6 years of war leave Japan physically devastated, economically ruined, occupied by foreign forces, and facing fundamental questions about national identity and future direction. The sun setting on empire as new dawn approaches under American occupation. Ashes of defeat, World War II, and occupation silence blankets Tokyo as Emperor Hirohito's voice, never before heard by common citizens, crackles through radios nationwide on August 15th, 1945. Speaking in formal court language difficult for average listeners to fully comprehend, he announces Japan must endure the unendurable and accept Allied terms. In carefully chosen words, he never mentions surrender or defeat, but acknowledges war situation has developed not necessarily to Japan's advantage. Soldiers weep openly, civilians absorb paralyzing shock. Some military officers choose ritual suicide rather than witness national humiliation. A nation taught divine protection, guaranteed ultimate victory, confronts incomprehensible reality. Aircraft carriers rest at bottom of Pacific. Cities lie in ruins, and foreign troops prepare to occupy sacred soil never before conquered in recorded history. Supreme Commander of Allied Powers, General Douglas MacArthur, arrives August 30th, directing occupation with unprecedented authority. American forces deploy throughout islands, while Emperor remains on throne. Controversial Allied decision aiming to maintain order and facilitate reforms using existing power structures. September 2nd, 1945. Japanese representatives board USS Missouri in Tokyo Bay, signing surrender documents as American aircraft roar overhead in overwhelming display of military dominance. MacArthur addresses global radio audience. Let us pray that peace be now restored to the world, and that God will preserve it always. For Japan, however, profound uncertainty looms. Will occupiers dismember nation, abolish imperial system, prosecute emperor as war criminal? Occupation policies reveal ambitious program of demilitarization and democratization. New constitution, drafted by American officials in February 1946, establishes parliamentary democracy, guarantees fundamental human rights, ensures judicial independence, and includes famous Article 9 renouncing war and prohibiting maintenance of armed forces. Emperor transitions from divine sovereign to symbol of state, retaining throne but surrendering political authority. Women receive voting rights. Labor unions gain legal protection. Educational system undergoes comprehensive revision, eliminating militaristic and ultra-nationalist content. And land reform redistributes holdings from absentee landlords to tenant farmers, creating conservative rural voting bloc supportive of post-war order. Justice accompanies reform. The International Military Tribunal for the Far East, Tokyo Trials, convenes May 1946 through November 1948. 28 military and civilian leaders face charges of war crimes and crimes against peace. 7, including General Tojo Hideki, receive death sentences. 16 receive life imprisonment. 2 receive lesser terms, and 2 die during proceedings. Critics note selective prosecution. Emperor Hirohito receives immunity despite ultimate authority. Unit 731 biological warfare researchers gain exemption in exchange for data, and certain atrocities receive little attention for Cold War political purposes. Alternative perspective emerges through dissenting opinion of Indian Justice Radha Binod Pal, who questions victors' right to judge defeated while noting Allied actions like strategic bombing of civilian populations. Economic crisis threatens occupation goals. Industrial production collapses to 14% of pre-war levels. Hyperinflation devours savings. Food shortages cause widespread malnutrition. And infectious diseases spread through weakened population. Initial American policy emphasizes reparations and deconcentration of economic power by breaking up zaibatsu conglomerates. However, Cold War realities, particularly communist victory in Chinese Civil War and outbreak of Korean War, prompt strategic reversal from punitive to reconstructive approach. The reverse course, beginning 1948, emphasizes economic recovery, industrial rebuilding, and positioning Japan as anti-communist bulwark in Asia. American policymaker Joseph Dodge implements austerity programs stabilizing currency while focusing resources on export industries that will fuel future recovery. Cultural transformation accelerates under occupation. American influences pour into society previously isolated by war and nationalism. Baseball becomes national passion. Hollywood films attract massive audiences. Jazz and dance halls proliferate, and English phrases enter everyday language. Traditional values face challenge from democratic ideals emphasizing individual rights over collective obligations. Women's legal status improves dramatically through constitutional equality provisions, though social practices evolve more slowly. Religious freedom replaces state Shinto, while emperor publicly renounces divine status in Declaration of Humanity on January 21, 1946, stunning subjects who previously viewed him as living God. Cold War tensions reshape occupation priorities. Communist China's emergence and Soviet expansionism elevate Japan's strategic importance beyond reform considerations. San Francisco Peace Treaty, signed September 8, 1951, officially ends Allied occupation, though American bases remain under separate security treaty. Japan regains sovereignty April 28, 1952, completing formal transition from enemy to ally, while maintaining significant limitations on military capabilities. American forces remain on Japanese soil, particularly Okinawa, which stays under direct U.S. administration until 1972. Japan emerges from occupation fundamentally transformed. Pacifist constitution, democratic institutions, reformed economy, and Western-oriented foreign policy replace militarism and ultranationalism, though questions of war responsibility, historical memory, and national identity remain unresolved beneath rapid economic recovery about to begin. Economic miracle, post-war recovery, and global dominance. Ruins stretch across industrial heartlands as Japan enters 1952, factories destroyed, infrastructure crippled, overseas markets lost, and natural resources virtually non-existent. Economist Kenneth Galbraith predicts Japan might achieve living standards comparable to pre-industrial revolution within century. Pessimistic assessment seemingly justified by devastation visible everywhere. Yet within ruins lie hidden assets, educated workforce, institutional knowledge, cultural discipline, and industrial experience awaiting opportunity. Prime Minister Yoshida Shigeru focuses national attention on economic reconstruction under Yoshida Doctrine. Minimize defense spending under American security umbrella, avoid international political entanglements, and concentrate entirely on rebuilding domestic prosperity through export-driven growth. Korean War creates unexpected catalyst. American military procurement orders flood struggling Japanese industries with demands for vehicles, equipment, and supplies worth over $1 billion between 1950 and 1953. Manufacturing capacity rebuilds rapidly to meet wartime demand while avoiding wartime destruction. Ministry of International Trade and Industry, MITI, emerges as powerful coordinating force, implementing industrial policy directing capital toward strategic sectors, controlling foreign technology imports, managing competition, and orchestrating administrative guidance, steering private corporations toward national objectives without direct ownership. Financial system channels domestic savings toward industrial investment through close coordination between government planners and major banks. Creating main bank system, where each keiretsu industrial group maintains relationship with specific financial institution. Industrial conglomerates reform from pre-war zaibatsu foundations under new keiretsu structure. Networks of companies maintaining relationships through cross-shareholding, personnel exchanges, preferential trading, and coordination around central banking relationships. 6 major groups emerge: Mitsubishi, Mitsui, Sumitomo, Fuyo, Daiichi Kangyo, and Sanwa, collectively dominating economy while maintaining formal independence, satisfying American anti-monopoly requirements. Business-government partnership solidifies under Iron Triangle, connecting bureaucrats, politicians, and industry through formal consultation mechanisms, informal networks, and revolving door career paths, allowing retired officials to assume corporate positions, practice known as amakudari, or descent from heaven. Labor management relations stabilize through lifetime employment system offering job security, seniority-based advancement, and company welfare programs in exchange for loyalty and productivity. Spring Shunto wage negotiations coordinate increases across industries, while enterprise unions replace confrontational class-based organizations. Agricultural productivity increases dramatically through mechanization, chemical fertilizers, and scientific farming methods, releasing rural workers for industrial employment in emerging urban centers along Pacific coast. Densely populated manufacturing belt stretches from Tokyo, Yokohama through Nagoya to Osaka, Kobe, creating megalopolis concentrating production, consumption, innovation, and wealth. Transportation revolution connects nation through infrastructure investment. 21,000 kilometers of new or improved roads, high-speed Shinkansen bullet train, debuting 1964 for Tokyo Olympics, modernized ports handling increasing export volume, and airports linking Japan to global destinations. Communications networks expand through telephone proliferation, television broadcasting, and early computerization, creating information flows necessary for sophisticated economic coordination. Energy needs met through massive imports. Oil replaces coal as primary source after Middle Eastern supplies become accessible. Nuclear power development begins, and efficiency standards reduce consumption requirements across industrial sectors. Targeted industrial development proceeds through distinct phases. 1950s emphasize coal, steel, shipbuilding, and basic materials rebuilding industrial foundation. 1960s shift toward automobiles, electronics, and household appliances catering to domestic and international consumer markets. 1970s advance into high technology sectors, including computers, semiconductors, precision machinery, and advanced materials. Each transition involves coordinated migration of capital, labor, technology, and expertise from declining to ascending industries, maintaining growth momentum while upgrading capabilities. Sony introduces transistor radio 1955, symbolic breakthrough, demonstrating capacity for innovation rather than mere imitation, while Toyota Production System revolutionizes manufacturing through just-in-time delivery, Kaizen continuous improvement, and quality control circles eliminating waste while enhancing productivity. Quality replaces price as competitive advantage after Made in Japan transforms from mockery to mark of excellence. Rigorous standards, obsessive attention to detail, and constant refinement create products superior to Western alternatives. Japanese automobiles conquer American market beginning 1970, with Toyota, Nissan, and Honda offering reliability and fuel efficiency precisely when oil shocks make these attributes precious to consumers. Electronics manufacturers similarly dominate through superior engineering, manufacturing precision, and relentless innovation, creating global household names like Panasonic, Sony, Sharp, and Toshiba, while pioneering miniaturization and performance improvements across product categories. First oil shock, 1973, sends petroleum prices quadrupling overnight, exposing dangerous dependency in resource-poor nation importing 99% of oil requirements. Economic growth stalls temporarily until adaptation measures reduce energy intensity through conservation, efficiency improvements, and industrial restructuring. Appreciation of yen. After 1971 Smithsonian Agreement and 1973 floating exchange rates increases export challenges, yet innovative manufacturing and superior quality maintain competitive advantage despite higher relative prices. Environmental reconsideration follows industrial pollution incidents. Minamata mercury poisoning, Yokkaichi asthma cases, and other contamination disasters prompt environmental protection legislation, cleanup initiatives, and industrial practice reforms reflecting broader societal priorities beyond mere economic growth. Financial deregulation and internationalization accelerate through 1980s. Yen denomination bonds, offshore markets, foreign exchange liberalization, and banking sector reforms enable Japanese financial institutions to operate globally. Asset price inflation creates bubble economy between 1985 and 1990. Stock market quadruples, while urban land prices multiply tenfold through speculative investment, excessive liquidity, and financial deregulation. Seemingly unstoppable economic machine inspires books predicting Japanese dominance of 21st century. American anxieties peak as Japanese investors purchase iconic properties including Rockefeller Center, Pebble Beach Golf Course, and major Hollywood studios, while trade frictions intensify through semiconductor disputes, automobile quotas, and structural impediment initiatives. Plaza Accord 1985 coordinates international effort to reduce dollar value relative to yen, addressing trade imbalances, but accelerating Japanese asset inflation through monetary expansion, attempting to counteract export impacts. Ministry of Finance attempts corrective action. 1989, through interest rate increases and lending restrictions, triggering spectacular collapse beginning 1990 as stock market loses 60% of value and real estate prices enter multi-decade decline. Banking system conceals massive non-performing loans while extending further credit to prevent corporate failures, creating zombie companies, neither failing nor recovering. Economic stagnation settles across once miraculous landscape as lost decade beginning 1991 extends into multiple decades. Growth averaging less than 1% annually contrasts dramatically with double-digit expansion during miracle years, though living standards remain among world's highest despite relative decline. Japan achieves unprecedented transformation despite stagnation endpoint. 1953 per capita income. 20% of American levels rises to match United States by 1987, creating advanced industrial democracy from war-devastated nation in single generation. Economic miracle reshapes global industrial landscape, establishes new management paradigms, and demonstrates non-Western development path combining market mechanisms with strategic guidance. Yet, questions persist beneath statistics. Lifetime employment system covers minority of workers. Dual economy separates efficient export sectors from protected domestic industries. Regional disparities concentrate benefits in urban corridors. Demographic challenges loom as birth rates decline and population ages. And economic security replaces traditional cultural patterns with materialist values. Japan emerges transformed. World's second largest economy, until surpassed by China 2010, technological powerhouse, and peaceful democracy, though Miracle's conclusion reveals both extraordinary achievement and inherent limitations of model that revolutionized global perceptions of what remains possible within single human lifetime. Digital Dynasty, Contemporary Japan and Future Horizons. Cherry blossoms flutter across Tokyo's Shibuya crossing, world's busiest intersection where thousands traverse with each light change beneath towering video screens broadcasting fashion, entertainment, and financial data. 21st century Japan embodies striking contrasts. Technological sophistication alongside ancient traditions. Demographic crisis parallel to robotic innovation. Economic maturity versus digital transformation. Bubble economy's collapse at 1990's beginning leaves complex legacy. Corporate restructuring, financial reform, political realignment, and social reconsideration reshape nation that dominated global economic imagination during preceding decades. Lost decades debate continues among economists. Whether extended period represents tragic stagnation or inevitable rebalancing after unsustainable growth spurt, leaving Japan still among world's wealthiest societies despite relative decline. Political transformation accelerates after 1993. Electoral reforms shatter Liberal Democratic Party's continuous post-war dominance, introducing instability previously unknown, with 6 prime ministers serving during 1993 through 1996 alone. Junichiro Koizumi emerges 2001 as reformist leader, charismatic maverick challenging vested interests through postal privatization, banking sector cleanup, administrative reorganization, and structural adjustments while reviving nationalist themes through controversial Yasukuni shrine visits. Structural reform without sanctuary becomes rallying cry, though implementation often proves difficult against bureaucratic resistance, factional politics, and voter anxiety. Democratic Party achieves historic victory 2009 under Yukio Hatoyama, ending LDP dominance briefly before voter disappointment returns conservatives under nationalistic Shinzo Abe, whose Abenomics economic program combines monetary expansion, fiscal stimulus, and structural reform, attempting to overcome deflationary spiral. Demographic crisis casts lengthening shadow over economic prospects. Fertility rate falls below replacement level 1974 and continues declining to approximately 1.3 children per woman, while life expectancy reaches world's highest at 87 years for women and 81 for men. Population begins absolute decline 2008 after peaking near 128 million. Projections suggest shrinkage below 100 million by 2050, unless birth rates recover dramatically or immigration policies change radically. Aging society confronts unprecedented challenges. 40% of residents exceed 65 by 2050. Pension systems strain against declining contributor-to-recipient ratios. Healthcare costs escalate treating chronic conditions. Labor shortages emerge across sectors, and tax-based contracts, while expenditure requirements grow. Rural depopulation accelerates as youth migrate toward urban opportunities, leaving countryside dotted with abandoned schools, shuttered businesses, vacant homes, and aging residents maintaining communities despite dwindling numbers. Immigration remains contentious solution. Historically homogeneous society displays ambivalence toward foreign residents, constituting less than 2% of population despite labor shortages. Technical trainee programs, skilled worker visas, and international student recruitment expand gradually. Yet significant barriers persist through language requirements, cultural differences, and integration challenges. Robotic innovation offers alternative response. Development of service robots, industrial automation, artificial intelligence systems, and assistive technologies addresses labor shortages while building upon electronic and engineering advantages. Hospitals deploy robotic caregivers. Factories install fully automated production lines. Convenience stores test unmanned operations, and elderly individuals receive robotic companions, providing stimulation and monitoring. Whether technological solutions can fully compensate for population decline remains uncertain, raising profound questions about economic models, social contracts, and national identity developed during high-growth era. Environmental leadership emerges through necessity and opportunity. Resource-poor nation pioneers energy efficiency, waste reduction, and pollution control technologies through necessity, while recognizing export potential for green innovations. Kyoto Protocol, negotiated 1997, symbolizes commitment to climate action, though subsequent implementation challenges reveal tensions between environmental protection and economic priorities. Nuclear power generates approximately 30% of electricity until Fukushima Daiichi disaster 2011, when magnitude 9 earthquake triggers tsunami overwhelming safety systems at coastal plant. 3 reactor meltdowns force evacuation of surrounding communities, contaminate environment, and prompt nationwide operational suspension of nuclear facilities. Energy policy reconsideration follows, expanding renewable sources while temporarily increasing fossil fuel imports despite climate implications, though nuclear restarts gradually progress under enhanced safety standards. Fukushima decommissioning continues as multi-decade project, with technological challenges and controversies surrounding contaminated water management. Cultural exports accelerate through Cool Japan promotion, government-supported initiative marketing entertainment, fashion, cuisine, and design internationally. Anime and manga continue global spread with franchises like Pokémon, Studio Ghibli films, and Shonen Jump publications achieving worldwide recognition. Japanese video game companies, Nintendo, Sony, Square Enix, Capcom, shape global entertainment through iconic franchises, innovative hardware, and gameplay innovations. J-pop music, fashion trends, architectural aesthetics, and minimalist design philosophy influence global tastes while generating export income. Culinary diplomacy expands through proliferation of Japanese restaurants worldwide. Sushi, ramen, matcha, and sake become familiar internationally, while government program certifies authenticity. Tourism grows dramatically after visa relaxation, transportation improvements, and accommodation expansion. Visitor numbers rising from approximately 6 million annually 2003 to record 32 million 2019 before coronavirus pandemic temporarily reverses trend. Olympics originally scheduled 2020, postponed to 2021, represents culmination of Cool Japan strategy, showcasing technological innovation, organizational excellence, cultural heritage, and modern capabilities on global stage. Technological frontiers extend across multiple domains. High-speed maglev train development breaks 500 kilometers per hour on test track, while commercial service between Tokyo and Nagoya scheduled 2027 promises 40-minute journey. Robotics research produces increasingly sophisticated humanoid systems. Honda's Asimo demonstrates autonomous navigation, facial recognition, and complex manipulation capabilities. Electronics manufacturers pioneer new categories. Sony's PlayStation maintains gaming leadership. Canon and Nikon cameras define professional standards, and component suppliers provide critical elements for global smartphone production. Toyota develops hydrogen fuel cell vehicles commercially available through Mirai model while advancing autonomous driving research. Internet conglomerates demonstrate different evolutionary path from American counterparts. Rakuten combines e-commerce, financial services, and telecommunications. Line messaging platform expands into payment systems, entertainment content, and service provision, while Yahoo Japan maintains relevance long after American original fades. Technological developments bring benefits alongside societal questions. Privacy implications, impact on employment patterns, social isolation concerns, and appropriate regulatory frameworks generate ongoing discussion. Regional relationships evolve against shifting geopolitical landscape. Historical tensions with Korea and China periodically resurface through territorial disputes, historical interpretation differences, and nationalist politics despite deep economic integration. American security alliance remains cornerstone of defense policy, though burden-sharing questions, base controversies especially on Okinawa, and changing regional power dynamics prompt reconsideration of arrangements dating from occupation era. Constitutional revision debate continues, particularly regarding Article 9's war renunciation provisions amid North Korean missile threats, Chinese maritime assertiveness, and regional security uncertainties. Self-defense forces incrementally expand capabilities while maintaining formal constitutional limitations, participating in United Nations peacekeeping operations, regional humanitarian missions, and limited security partnerships beyond American alliance. Strategic anxieties intensify as East Asian power balance shifts. China's economic and military rise alters calculations, while American commitment questions emerge periodically, despite reassurances. Social transformation continues beneath institutional stability. Gender roles evolve gradually, despite persistent inequality in workplace advancement, political representation, and domestic responsibilities. Womenomics initiatives under Abe administration attempt increasing female workforce participation, addressing labor shortages while promoting equality through corporate governance reforms, childcare expansion, and workplace practice changes. Traditional family structures evolve as marriage rates decline, first childbirth age rises, and single-person households increase, particularly in urban areas. Alternative lifestyles gain visibility, though not necessarily mainstream acceptance. LGBTQ communities seek recognition through partnership ordinances and anti-discrimination protections despite constitutional amendment debates focusing exclusively on traditional family definitions. Youth culture develops distinctive patterns. Hikikomori social withdrawal phenomenon, affects estimated 1 million individuals avoiding outside contact. Frieders work temporary jobs rejecting corporate career paths, while declining interest in overseas study raises questions about future international engagement amid increasingly inward focus. Disaster resilience remains national priority through necessity. Island archipelago positioned along Ring of Fire experiences approximately 1,500 earthquakes annually. Great Hanshin. Earthquake 1995 kills over 6,000 in Kobe, prompting building code improvements and emergency response reconsideration. Great East Japan Earthquake 2011, magnitude 9 underwater tremor triggering massive tsunami, causes nearly 20,000 deaths, widespread infrastructure destruction across Tohoku region, and aforementioned Fukushima nuclear disaster. Recovery combines physical reconstruction with community restoration. Though population decline accelerates in affected regions despite investment. Climate change intensifies weather extremes, increasing typhoon strength, precipitation intensity, and flooding frequency, while adaptation measures include massive infrastructure projects like Tokyo metropolitan area, outer underground, discharge channel, redirecting floodwaters through underground tunnels and chambers beneath vulnerable communities. Future directions remain subject of national conversation. Whether 21st century represents continuation of post-war development trajectory or fundamentally different path requiring institutional reinvention, social reconfiguration, and identity reconsideration. Technological leadership contrasts with conservative social structures. Rapid aging challenges growth model emphasizing labor-intensive manufacturing. Global interconnection exists alongside persistent insularity, and cultural confidence coexists with anxiety about national direction. Ancient imperial succession continues unbroken through Emperor Naruhito's ascension following Akihito's abdication 2019. First such transition under post-war constitution as Reiwa era begins with name characters meaning beautiful harmony. Tradition provides continuity, while adaptation enables resilience. Characteristics defining Japanese experience across recorded history from mythological age through contemporary challenges. Cherry blossoms return each spring regardless of imperial era or economic circumstance, reminding observers of both impermanence and renewal, central to cultural understanding that has navigated foreign influences, internal conflicts, environmental challenges, and technological revolutions, while maintaining distinctive identity through perpetual transformation balance that continues evolving into uncertain yet promising future.